Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for giving up some time to watch this little video that we've recorded. We're wanting to share with you what it says on the screen, developing a discipleship culture at West Street Christian Fellowship. This essential part of our lives as Christians hasn't necessarily been missing over the last little while, but we would like to become much more intentional in working it out together. Over the last 9 months, the leaders have prayed and talked and begun to work out how this could be accomplished. We have begun an engagement with Kairos Connections, which is a network of churches that have this same intent. And through engaging with them, we will be able to learn and pass on so much good stuff with regards to a discipleship culture. So, Graham, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. It's great to do this and to share this. And what we'll be sharing today is an outline of the direction we believe we should be moving in. There are lots of details that still need to be worked out, but we really want to know what you think about the overall shape of what we are proposing.
So, Graham, what is a disciple?
It's a great question. There's lots of different answers to that. So our working definition is this. It's someone who trusts and follows Jesus and helps others to do the same.
So it's not enough just to come to church on a Sunday?
No. It's not about whether we come to a church service on a Sunday, although that's a really good thing to do. It's first and foremost about our relationship with Jesus, trusting him, following him, obeying him, and having an intentional focus on helping others to do the same. Just as the first disciples of Jesus were passionate about introducing others to him as well. So that's why we're defining it as someone who trusts and follows Jesus and helps others to do the same. And we also see this as a way to enable us to more effectively live out our desire to love God, to build family, and to love crew.
Okay, so culture is quite a buzzword at the moment. What is a discipleship culture, and how do you know when you're in one?
I think it's about two things. It's about purpose and it's about function. Because there are lots of reasons that people choose to be involved in the church. They enjoy coming together to worship God. They see it as their extended family. They see it as a place to get involved in Christian activities and outreach. They love being on rotas. And all of these are good and important, but sometimes they can obscure the primary function, that of being disciples and making disciples. So that's why we think that this culture recognizes that the primary function of the church is to be those people. And if that's our calling, and it is, it needs to be the main focus. And everything we do needs to support that.
Okay, so I can see that our church already does provide opportunities for this. So we've got Sunday gatherings, some people meet in prayer triplets, we've got house groups, we've got Alpha, the various ministries that go on. Why do we need to look further?
Great question. And these are all good and to be encouraged, and we need to do that. But I think there are two reasons. One is, it's worth asking the question, how many of those have a clear focus on discipleship and making disciples? Some do, clearly, some don't. And the next thing is to recognize that this is the responsibility for all of us. And do we all see it that way?
Quite a challenge.
Yes.
So there's a lot going on at the moment with coming out of lockdown. Why is it crucial that we look at this topic now?
I think there's a number of reasons. I think the need is great. The need to bless people in the name of Jesus in our town is huge.
Yeah.
I think it refocuses our attention on Jesus, which is always good, and what he calls us to do. As we move forward, post-COVID and post-lockdown, it provides a framework as to something we can focus on moving forwards. And it gives us an opportunity to review what we're doing and change where necessary. And if in a year's time, we've come out of COVID lockdown, we've restored everything in our church context to what it was before COVID arrived, would we really be doing what Jesus is calling us to do at this time? Would we be the blessing to the town that it so desperately needs?
Okay, so talk to us about why discipleship is a good thing.
I think it's something that God wants to do in each of us so that we can grow to become more like Jesus. God disciples us. We see that throughout the Bible. And the example of Jesus while he was here on earth shows that he does this through relationship, which is why relationships with God, with each other, with those we are trying to introduce to Jesus are so important. And when we think about loving God and building family and loving crew, different aspects of these can be done in different settings. And we saw that in what you all said in the recent survey we did. We'll look at those settings shortly. And the idea of different things being appropriate in different settings, that fourth point on the slide, is really important. It's something I think we naturally understand based on our experiences, although some of our experiences may differ. For example, we're more likely to share sensitive information about what's going on in our lives with those we are close to than someone we meet at a bus stop or even in a church gathering. So we need to provide a way in which different things can happen in different places and different contexts.
Yeah, that's really important. Okay, so tell us about these lovely colourful circles. Is this an outline for how we might get to grips with discipleship?
It is, and it's something that I'm quite excited about. It's something that people have been exploring for some time. There's books being written about this. I think there's something really good here. And what we want to suggest is there are 5 different contexts for discipleship, and that they each contribute in different ways to our goals. And importantly, they are all contexts that we see modeled powerfully by Jesus. And that gives us a good basis for working with them. In this video, we're going to briefly outline each one. And as we do so, the key question we'd like you to think about is whether or how you are engaging in each of these, or are there some that are missing?
Okay, so let's start with the divine context. So I'm guessing this is where it might look like time set aside each day where it's just me and God. We've recently introduced the Lexio 365 app that I know quite a few people are really enjoying. We've got lots of resources at our fingertips to help us to spend time with God. And we can do that anywhere. At home and in our favourite chair, go out for a walk, listen to a worship song, read the Bible, etc. So can you say any more about this divine context?
Yeah, I think there are some important things to say. It needs to be a priority. And for some, due to different responsibilities, different stages of life, that will be more difficult than others. We need to recognise that. Different people will do this in different ways. You just referred to that. And that's absolutely fine. We can encourage and suggest resources to help with this. You mentioned some, but it's down to each of us to choose to do this or not. And as you can see from the description, this is not just about taking a few minutes to read a Bible passage or to come to God with a list of prayer requests. It's about deepening our relationship with him, inviting him to change us to be more like Jesus and to seek to understand what he wants for us in our lives. It's where it all starts. It's vitally important.
Okay. All right, let's go on to the next one, the transparent context. So 2 to 4 people who would form a close bond. So if I'm single, it's good to have a couple of people who I feel really comfortable with, where I can share quite honestly about who I am, what I'm struggling with, and they with me. If I'm married, could this be with my spouse if I chose to?
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, that choice thing is important. But it is vitally important that this is done with people you are comfortable with, where you can share openly and honestly, and where you give the other person, the other people, the right to hold you accountable. For many married couples, that she says, yes, the spouse would naturally be one of these people, but they often form groups with others as well. So someone might have this type of relationship with a spouse, but also with a small group of close friends. And often this can work best with people of the same gender. An example of this type of group would be a prayer triplet, where they are doing other things in addition to meeting to pray. They're sharing talking about successes and failures. They're challenging each other to grow, to become more like Jesus. And they have fun together. Why not?
It's a really precious thing, isn't it? Those small groups.
Yeah.
So the personal context we're going on to now, 4 to 12 people. So this is a smallish group. Just to clarify, how would this be different from how house groups have been run over the past 50 plus years?
Well, yeah, there are clearly a lot of similarities with existing house groups or small groups, but these have an intentional focus on making disciples as well, which is often missing in these groups. There's an outward focus as we reach out into our town.
Okay. So social context, and in brackets, missional community, which sounds interesting. We'll perhaps come on to that phrase in a moment. So first of all, can you suggest what this larger group does to spend time together? As I doubt they would be meeting in someone's house, because I don't think my house will be big enough for 20 to 40 people. And who decides what happens during this time together? Are there leaders of this group? Are the groups made up of the small groups that we mentioned in the last slide in the personal context, or are they a random spread of people? How does this work?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is the one that people will be, I think, least familiar with, because these are groups that are missing in most churches, including ours. Although Church at 4 came close, Seniors Day started to explore some of this. But these groups, I believe, are vital in reaching out to people who don't yet know Jesus, which is where this term missional community comes from. It's a community of people who are focused on mission. And they can be easier things to invite new people to. If you're arranging a barbecue with this group, for example, and each person invites a friend, then these new people feel much less on show than if they're invited into a group of 6 or 7 or even 10 people. And they can start to develop relationships more easily. And from there, conversations about Jesus and faith can become natural, although this does need to be a clear and intentional focus to avoid this just becoming a social gathering. Sometimes they do meet in houses, although, as you say, that will not be practicable in many cases. Others meet outdoors, particularly if they're focused around a particular interest activity. We could use some of the rooms in our buildings. It is led by a small group of leaders, normally 2 to 4, and the group themselves are responsible for defining their missional focus and vision.
Okay.
And the norm is that the focus is on a particular neighbourhood, maybe the streets around which a number of people live, or a housing estate. Some communities have been formed as a group of parents had a real heart for the school their children attended, or they just wanted to support each other as they coped with the pleasure and the joys and the challenges of bringing up children today. So think of a small group of people getting together and developing a passion for reaching out into a particular area and working out how they're going to do it. That's the sort of thing that we're talking about. One community I heard about took over a building in the centre of a town and turned it into a coffee shop. And that allowed the group to meet together and also enabled more personal discussions around tables. Very natural place to meet. The emphasis is less on organising events and more on living life together and inviting non-believers to be part of it. Those who do have a faith often meet together at other times in a personal context to build those aspects of discipleship.
Well, I can see this being actually a very exciting thing to be part of. And as the new people join in, who perhaps don't have a faith yet, how much are they expected to be part of that missional focus, that discipleship making culture? How does that work?
Well, I think this is an exciting part of this, because while we really want to encourage them clearly to come to know Jesus, it is certainly possible that they can be involved in the mission focus of the group before coming to faith. If, for example, the group has a heart for blessing the local school, then other parents might want to be part of that.
Yeah.
And through that engagement, they build relationships, which makes leading on to conversations about faith easier and more natural.
Mm. Brilliant. Okay, so public context. This one is probably the one that looks the most familiar. So is it a bit like our Sunday services? And if so, what is different from the way we've done things over the last 50 plus years?
And yes, it is very similar to existing Sunday services. But again, there's a question about focus. It is not the main event that we do as church. It is not where we need to work on all those 5 contexts of discipleship because they're being developed in other areas. It's not primarily the place to which we invite non-believers. That is best done initially in the social context. So our emphasis switches from inviting people to church to inviting people to know Jesus. It is a place where we worship and learn together, but also where we are prepared and equipped for all we will be doing in the week. So I think a big part of this is hearing stories of what's been going on so that we can each be inspired and encouraged in our own walk of discipleship.
A helpful phrase that I've heard from Kairos Connections is that the Sunday gathering is the cherry on the cake, and the other areas and times that we would do discipleship are the cake. So to keep it in that ratio, I guess, is going to be a change for some people, but a healthy one, I think.
Both cherries and cakes are good.
Definitely.
So these are those contexts, the divine context where we focus on our relationship with God as individuals, the transparent one where we share deeply with close friends, the personal one where we encourage each other to grow as disciples and to make disciples, the social one, a larger community where others can be included and then introduced to Jesus, and the public context, whole church gatherings for worship, growth and encouragement.
Okay, I think I get it. So quite tricky to keep all those 5 in your head. So I'm sure we'll keep referring to those different contexts. But what next? What's the plan going forwards?
As this says, there are 3 things we want to do. We want to hear and know what people think. Where is the church on this? Is this something that excites people, terrifies people? It's like, hang on, this is not what we should be doing. We want to know what people think. We're going to spend some time later this year preaching around these 5 contexts, looking at how they were worked out in the life of Jesus to help ground what we're talking about in that amazing story. And as we think about taking these forwards, and it's going to be a journey, we would want to work out how to develop each of these contexts in the life of our church.
Fantastic.
So as part of that, we've got some questions for you to think about. Some people will be on Zoom and split into a breakout room. Some people will be in the building and we can split people up. We can split up there. So here's some questions to think about in groups. What do you think? Does this excite you or concern you? How do you see this benefiting the fellowship and our local community? And which contexts do we each need to develop most?
Well, there you go. Go away and discuss.